I'm Dana Arnett.
And I'm Carlos Apeni.
And this is Wicked Marketing. Today we're going to be talking about websites, the basics of why you would have a website, what people would come to you for and what they're looking for when they get to a website. And I will say, Carlos, I think you remember this, when I didn't know what the point of a website was until we got so deep into it that I learned how we build them and why we build them. And I think that's a great history around that.
Yeah, well, so the thing to know about websites is that a lot of people take it as a place where you are going to push a lot of information onto people.
True.
Almost like writing an article about your company, right? And any medium that has come throughout history is basically an evolution of a previous medium, right? Or a previous form of communication.
Right.
And the principles that we have learned over time about that type of communication are applicable as these mediums continue to develop. So think about it this way. When you're developing a website, you're developing the storefront to your store, right? So imagine a traditional brick and mortar store.
Right.
And if you had a store, let's say you had a shoe store, you wouldn't put all the shoes
in the window.
In the window, right? You would put your best shoes in the window, the ones that you're most proud of, the ones that you
most attractive.
Exactly, the ones that would be the most attractive. You also wouldn't shove a ton of shoes in the window because that wouldn't look good, right?
Right.
So when you think about why you would only put your best shoes in the window, is because you wanted to put your best foot forward. You didn't want to overwhelm people.
Did you not realize that you just made a really good joke about best foot forward for the shoe store?
I didn't realize
well
that.
done.
But the idea there, and it's something that is true through any of these mediums, right, in particular in the web, is that you were thinking about the other people, right? The people that were going to walk through your storefront. And that's one of the principles that is missed a lot when people are developing websites.
Well, what do we say too? It's very hard when you're inside it, to look from the outside as to what the customer might be wanting or needing.
Yeah, and that's where the concept of being outside the building comes from. The idea here is that when you're developing a website, the first thing that you have to think of is, what is it that the person that's coming to this website would be interested in?
Right.
What's going to spark their interest without me offloading my entire
right, and hoping that they pick something, grabs them.
Exactly. So you have to look at it, whether it's a marketing website, an e-commerce website, any sort of website, you have to think about it from the perspective of, what are my goals here, right? And making those goals from a priority standpoint based on what you want to communicate to people. So what that means is, if you are doing an e-commerce store for shoes, for example, when people come to you, they have specific needs for shoes, right? So you think about, what is it that they would be thinking of when they're coming to the site?
As an example, if they're looking for, if you're bridal shoes, if that's something that's a big seller for you and people are coming, they want to see the bridal shoes first before the tennis shoes.
Exactly. And that's the thing, right? So if your main thing is bridal shoes, then you may want to start with your bridal shoes, right? And connect that into any other type of product that you have that is in that bridal world. But if you're a multi-shoe type store, right, where you do have tennis shoes and you do have outerwear, sportswear, outerwear, what you want to do is think about, if I have all these types of shoes, then I'm going to have all these types of people
Clients,
coming to my site. And what you don't want to do is make people have to think, because human beings are lazy by nature, right? So
it's not an insult.
It's not an insult. It's just
kind of the way,
the reality of things. We want things in a straightforward way.
Easy to consume
way. So if you then think, okay, I have all these categories of shoes, right? How do I get the tennis person to the right shoe, the bridal person to the right shoe, the sports, whatever,
Sportswear, yep.
whatever type, the first thing that I have to do is get them down that path, the path of least resistance for them, right?
Right.
So then you would lay out your homepage to easily get people into the right type of shoe. Now that's assuming that you're a known shoe store, a known shoe brand, right? If you're not known, then you may want to introduce them first as to a reason why you are a great shoe brand, right? And so what the way that you would do that is by first analyzing what are called the pain points, right? So what are the pain points that this person that's coming to your website is looking to resolve or address, and then providing a solution for them.
Exactly. And that is with that, and it's not deepest format, because if some people are just looking to build a basic website and not something that's super detailed, is let's go with the idea that they had one shoe that was their thing. They were selling bridal shoes, right? And so you're talking about creating the persona of if the user, what is the user like that is coming to the website, right? And what they're looking for from their perspective.
Exactly. So then you would craft your messaging to respond to the questions that those people would be coming with in a positive manner, addressing their pain point, and without trying to push on them. Because the last thing we want is to feel marketed to,
Right.
lied to, right? So what you want to do is you want to be honest about it.
Are you on your big day? On your big day, do you want to feel comfortable and in luxury? Something, because typically brides don't, their feet hurt.
Yeah, so that could be an example. And then you would say, we are proud to showcase these products that address those specific needs, right? And then you have a showcase of those products. So that's, at the very basic, and what's most important about what we're talking about right now is that when you are developing a website, you're not developing it to tell people what you want them to know. You're developing it to answer or provide a solution for people so that they get a chance to connect with your brand.
Right. And you know how we were saying, we've talked about this all the time, it's like Field of Dreams, build it and they will come.
Yeah.
And it isn't just to the idea of, I'll be found once I'm there. To Carlos's point, it's not about me showcasing who I am and just to be there for people to vet me. It's really about people coming and drawing them in, because obviously you want something of a product or a service and you want to convert them to customers or clients.
And that's the thing, right? So on this podcast, we're talking to you about the function and form and the thought process behind building a website.
Exactly.
But like Dana was saying, there's this concept of build it and they'll come. So, which is how these websites started. I'll put a website out there and people will find me.
Because they didn't know what to do to get people.
Yeah, and there weren't as many websites as there are today. There's trillions of websites. God knows how many.
And how many
today,
dead websites that are not taken down.
Exactly, and fake websites. And so there's a lot of things that go into having a website nowadays, right? So some of those things are what we call trust factors. So when a person's coming to your website, they don't know you from Adam, right? If you're not a big brand, and we're trying to talk on these podcasts to all different levels of brands. But this is even real with the mid-sized brands as well. So what are things that you can do to reassure them that you're a trustworthy brand?
They've found the right place.
That they've found the right place. So there's a few ways to do this. If we think about any sort of website that is putting out there a product or service, you probably have seen this often. People will highlight their clients, people that they have relationships with, and those will usually be the biggest brands that they've interacted with and done business with in their experience. And that's just to highlight that those bigger brands have trusted them in them, right? The other thing that people will put on their site is testimonials,
right?
And that's also because in marketing, still the most effective way of marketing is word of mouth. And in particular, in the millennial generation, their word of mouth doesn't have to come from people that they know.
Right.
It can come from influencers. It can come from people that they met on the web, people that they read on Reddit or any sort of social media. So
Kind of an aggregate of the knowledge and the things that they found is what helps them make decisions.
Exactly. That's how they make decisions. So having testimonials on your website is another way to do it. And then there's the technical side of it too, having your website be secure.
When you go and you look in the search bar, and we've all seen this, and we still see this, and in the URL it says not secure, and there's a little X, I think.
Yeah.
That means that the website is not trusted on the Google side of it or the search side of it, correct?
Well, on the hosting side.
The hosting side,
yeah,
right.
There's no security certificate, so any information that you're entering into the website is not encrypted and can be picked up in transit from the website to the back end of the website, to the database, to however they're storing the information.
Right.
It can be easily be picked up by hackers or.
That's how you know if a site's old or somebody's not paying attention to it, is if that.
It's one of the indicators that tells, this is why you mentioned Google, that tells search engines whether the developer that developed the website knows what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is a little known and discussed fact, but in our next podcast, we'll talk a little bit about how to drive people to your brand.
Right.
But a little known fact is that one of the main indicators, I would say, that search engines use to define how to send traffic over the web is indicators like that, whether a developer actually knows what they're doing.
Right.
And there's many of those that we'll talk about on our next podcast.
Sure.
So going back to trust validators, what are other ways that you can validate trust in your brand? There's multiple ways, right? So there's the logos, there's the testimonials, there's the highlighting of social media, which is, right, if you have a hashtag where people are posting about your product, you can highlight that on your site.
Exactly.
And then it'll show people. So going back to our bridal shoe, if your brand hashtag is being used and there's women wearing those shoes and they have positive feedback about those shoes, and you have a wall of those posts coming directly from the social networks on your site, that's another trust validator.
And I just want to say about that's a really great, there's a plugin that we use called FlowFlow, and it aggregates all the social media channels, and you can put it on your website, and so you'll see all the posts that you want to have on there, and it's a great way to validate the work that you're doing or your product that you have.
Yeah, and so to that same point, reviews
as well.
And there's multiple sites that have reviews. The challenge with reviews is that they became so popular that in the dark web, what's called the dark web, right? That's the black hat techniques that people do. There's people that you can pay to write reviews for you.
Right.
Or there's bots that can write reviews for you. And it's
every good thing gets ruined, right? Every good thing.
So if you are going to trust reviews, read the actual review.
Exactly. Before you allow it on your site. Right?
Yeah. Well, and it's like, make sure when you're the person analyzing a site to whether or not to trust it, make sure that you can tell when multiple reviews have been written by the same person. Right. Because you can tell whether they have a ton of reviews for other brands. If all those reviews are positive, that's an indicator that.
Okay, but wait a second. I want to say this is our 6th podcast, and who do we share it with? Our friends and our social and across, all the people that we know. So yes, the first reviews that are in are people loving it. And I don't know if that's because they love us but as time and the word gets out, then you have people.
Yeah, but you're able to see that they actually heard the podcast.
Exactly.
Because they'll go in there and they'll mention specific things
that they learned
from the podcast that got them excited about the podcast.
And everything we say excites people.
Yeah.
It's a crazy thing.
Whereas when people are paying for reviews, the people that are getting paid to write those are probably in India. Let's be honest.
Right.
They're probably getting paid very little money.
Right.
And they're just,
They could be anywhere.
Yeah,
They could be
they're just
anywhere, but
like-
it's a business.
and
It's a
you'll
business.
read it and I'll be like, this is a great piece of clothing. It doesn't even say it's a t-shirt or a shoe. It's
Right.
like, so there's obvious indicators. So to wrap this up a little bit of what we're saying is that when you create a website, you have to think about the person that's coming to the website, right? What it is that is going to provide a solution for them more so than market your product to them. How are you providing a solution? And then you have to think from their perspective, how do I trust you? What are you doing that is showing me that you deserve my trust?
Right.
And people take trust in many different ways, right? And what will generate trust? Things that will generate trust are honesty. So being very direct, not fluffing things up
Right.
too much, right? Which people tend to fluff things up a lot. And then really identifying who are the people that are coming to your site. What age group are they in? What generation? How does that generation identify with trust? So like we were saying before, millennials identify with their general social
Right.
sphere.
Right.
Whereas Gen Zers, that are the newer generation, that are around 25 years old
And under.
and under nowadays, generate their own version of trust. And it's based on their own interactions and their own opinions and your reaction to their opinions.
Right.
So in those cases, in that new generation, conversational options, whether it's going on your social media and responding to comments that they're making on your posts, or having an area on your site where they can provide feedback. That's why I believe one of the reasons for chatbots on
Yeah, I
website
know
has
you.
had such a positive effect because they have a place to go ask questions
And communicate
and get
for sure.
answers.
And I want to say that thing. What I always look at when you're trying to be outside the building and thinking about what your customer would want, I always look at how do I shop. How do I, because it's really not magic. It is how am I as a consumer? How do I look for things or want things or what appeals to my heart or what clicks in my mind that, oh, that makes sense. It makes me want to scroll more or click on another page. If I put myself in the shoes of the user that's coming to me, how would they behave? Because I behave that way, whatever
And
generation.
One thing that I think is really important to say is that a lot of people take this to mean I'm going to go out there and I'm going to grab 5 of my friends and I'm going to have those 5 friends separately look at my site and tell me what they think. And the challenge here is that you're going to get very different responses from those friends
Because they know you.
They know you, and some of them are going to be visual, so they're going to expect things to be very clean visually to them. Some of them are going to be more editorial, so they're going to read a lot of the text and they're going to want things explained to them. And even of those people that read the copy, some of them are going to want it in bullets and some of
Right.
them are going to want it in paragraph. So you could end up going in circles and circles and circles. And that's not what we're saying here. What we're saying here is identify what are the key elements that you could put on your website that connect with people in order to provide a solution to
what?
their
Because
problem.
even if I'm a bride looking for a shoe, the solution is you're going to provide me a shoe. So it's pretty simple. And if it's a service-based business, it's the same thing. If you're a psychologist, which I know that a lot of psychologists can't advertise, but if you're a psychologist and people are coming to you, what are their need when they're looking for somebody like you? What do
And
they need?
always keep in mind that you have to have your copy and whatever you're putting in to connect with people at a second grade level. Because the challenge is that we think, and especially in service-based businesses, that you're going to come up with these big words that are going to be so impressive to people.
Sophisticated.
You're so sophisticated. And the problem is that it makes people feel dumb. And if people feel dumb, they will immediately
Right, you're not trying to shame people on your site, and you wouldn't know that. I think the last thing we'll say, because we'll be able to talk more about websites. And the last thing I'll say is just me, and that's it. But when I worked in television for so many years, one of my bosses, he was always, he would speak very simply and I worked in post-production, and make all the edits very simple and the story very simple. And I'd be like, God, it's just, there's so much more going on. He said, you have to speak to people. His was at a 6th grade level. And I thought that was so insulting right away. But he said, because you have to be like a common denominator. You have to be simple, that get your message across without making people have to think too much.
If you can't get your message across in a simple manner, then you're not getting the right message across.
Right, exactly. So yeah, so that's us on websites today. There's so much more to talk about, but I hope we gave you a little bit of a clue.
Yeah, so just to wrap things up, keep always in mind who are the people that are coming to your website, what their needs are, and how you can provide solutions to them while creating an environment of trust.
Right, and I hope that you've subscribed to Wicked Marketing and that you'll take a listen next week.
When we will be discussing how people get to websites.
Exactly. Have a great